Can you please state your name, whom you represent, and your position on the bill?
My name is, excuse me, good morning, my name is Cecilia Wood. I'm representing myself and I'm in favor of the bill. I am a board-certified family law attorney and I've been practicing for nearly 35 years. And I have seen in personal experiences with friends and family, but also just over the 35 years, that it's always the children that are the biggest losers in a divorce. And so when we can stop a divorce, we cannot always, I represent people in divorces, but when we can stop a divorce, that is the way to maintain safety and security. My parents were married until my mother died, and it was just short of their 50th wedding anniversary. And I remember their younger friends asking them, how did you do this? And they would both say, well, you know, when we were first married, we agreed that whoever wanted to leave could leave, but if you did, you had to take the kids with you. And after 5 kids, nobody wanted out. But that wasn't true. Now, my parents had problems. Many people do, but they learned to work through it. And some of this conflict we're hearing about, I'm telling you, the judges in all my counties, they're going to expect you to work through it anyway. You're going to have to get along to co-parent your children. And yet the children, you may go off and do other things, but the children are going to have to go from one place to the other. And they're going to have their school disrupted, their friends disrupted, their life disrupted, because you're putting your happiness in front of theirs. I represent abused parents. I have the entire 35 years before we even had protective orders. You have to say nasty things in protective orders. When everyone agrees, then you would agree to the insupportability. So in most of my cases, even when we file on insupportability, if you're fighting over anything, the dirty laundry comes out. I do think it would be a good idea to change our form and what we make public. I don't think that the school needs to see that mom was cheating or dad was cheating or that there was cruelty or whatever, and the schools do see these orders, but some of that can be fixed with our forms. I'm trying to kind of answer some of these questions here. We do have a ground, by the way, of abandonment. And if we need another ground, which we might in the 21st century need to be able to say drugs is cruelty, that's how I usually plead it, but to have a ground for that, because CPS will come take your kids if you're doing drugs, or pornography, that's very devastating to a marriage. Then maybe we need some more fault grounds that we didn't have to worry about back in 1970. But destroying the institution of marriage and making it, as people have said, unilateral, where you cannot, I mean, these days, in the beginning, yes, people might listen to the possibility of reconciliation, but not now. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Chair Frank.
And thank you for your testimony, Ms. Wood. Just curious, are there any states that have multiple, hear me, this may be crazy, but multiple ways to get married? Because to me, the no fault is not what I signed up for in mine. It's a covenant marriage. Are there any states that have, like, you can go the no fault route, or you can go the no, I really mean it, we're together in sickness and health kind of a route? That may be goofy, but essentially most people, you know, when we talk about marriage, the challenge with marriage now in our country is everybody has different takes. Some people get married and it's a covenant marriage. It's between, and then some get married and it's like it's good until it's not good and I'll leave. Is there any times where you could see a case where there's 2 different types of civil arrangements that you can sign up for?
I know that for a while, and I haven't looked at it in a while because we haven't had a covenant marriage bill in several sessions. I know that for a period of time there was in Louisiana, because my brother lived there for a while, and he was like, so what do you say? Oh no, I want the quickie I can get out kind of marriage. And so, but I do think it's a valid concern, and maybe would address some things, because in the Obergefell case, the court relied on the fact of how personal marriage is, and that would mean that the legitimate ends of your marriage, which is you have to actually prove 3 things even in supportability, and one of them is that the legitimate ends of the marriage are destroyed, and so your legitimate ends might be very different than Chair Leach's legitimate ends, or than my legitimate ends, and so right now, we do not have that in our law, and I'm not sure that that would necessarily protect children in some ways. I do think it would protect spouses. Because if you get into a marriage where you know this isn't forever, because basically in our country right now, we have a lot of serial monogamy. And you go to the second marriage and it's much higher. I do think that would be helpful. And I can find out for you what other states have that.
I'm just curious because obviously I'm very sensitive to, you don't want anybody staying in an abuse case. You don't want to, but at the same time, I think if you don't use the D word in your marriage, you got a lot better chance of having your marriage work if you consider it a permanent thing. I work with, younger married couples all the time, and it's like the one thing that'll make your marriage work is if you don't think you have option of divorce. And I don't mean that in the trap, because we need to make sure there's no abuse, but I'm just wondering if there's anyway.
Well, I agree that if you have an opportunity, especially when that makes you think, whose happiness comes first? My happiness or the happiness of these children that I've brought into the world?
Thank
Chair
you.
recognizes Representative Ramos.
Ms. Wood, so essentially we want to reduce the number of divorces. I guess that's the whole, right, the bottom line.
Yes.
So would the answer not be making marriage more difficult? So if you make marriage more difficult, you make people go through all of these hoops so they can know that person's really the one, then that will address the divorces. Is that correct? Because they went through all of these steps. Would that not be the better answer than forcing people to stay in a marriage? Would that not be a better answer than making marriages more difficult? Making marriages more difficult would be the better answer, because you'll prevent divorces, period, because they went to 20 classes and they waited for 6 months and all of this stuff. They had all these witnesses testifying to why they were the right ones for each other. Would that not be a better answer than forcing people to stay in a marriage?
I think that would be a great help, and we have had legislation.
Thank you, ma'am.
For that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, Chair recognizes Representative Massoud.
There was a statement made earlier that I think wasn't challenged, but perhaps should be, and it wasn't by you, that divorce itself doesn't hurt kids, but the conflict does. Would you agree that even divorce from two happy parents still hurts kids?
Yes, it does hurt kids. And here's kind of, and every once in a while, I'm not going to say I've never had a divorce like this, but every once in a while, both people have come in, both people have wanted the divorce, both people are getting along so well, they don't even feel like they need we put in a possession schedule because you don't know what the next significant other will want, but and you think, you love your children, why are you going to make them spend all weekend in the car? Why are you going to keep them from being able to march with the band? Why can't you just at least wait, like until you're not, they're sad when you're adults, but their life isn't turned upside down.
And would you agree that the prevalence of divorce has only increased since no-fault divorce was implemented?
Yes,
Okay.
I was a child still when
Sure.
I wasn't
alive.
Yeah, no, I bet you weren't. But yes, it has, and it's become almost a consideration. And so, and I'm not a psychologist, but all of those of you who do family law kind of know, you kind of start to see things. If you think that someone can get up and walk out with your kids, have an affair with another woman, get up and take the kids there. Or take, you're working and she can walk off with all of your money and you've been working for you're working 2 jobs, so now you're going to pay child support on that, and you're going to not be able to spend time with your kids because you could fit in the time when you were coming home to the same home, or all those things. You don't bond. Mm-hmm. And the other thing it says to a child is, well, daddy loved mommy and mommy loved daddy, and now they don't. So how do I know they love me?
Yeah. And the last question I have is, if it's more difficult to get a divorce, and even taking my colleagues' actually brilliant suggestion, which I agree with 100%, if it was more difficult to get married, wouldn't we have a higher view of marriage than we do now?
And we have to recess to get to the floor, so if you can make your answer really concise, please.
I think absolutely, and we would all benefit.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, members.